views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
I think that things went really well.
Nevada Democrats take stock of the caucuses as Bernie Sanders scores a runaway victory.
Bernie voted 5 times against the Brady bill.
And Sanders' win here in Nevada makes him the target of other presidential candidates during a debate in South Carolina. Plus, how Nevada is preparing itself in the event someone here gets the coronavirus.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now with Steve Sebelius.
Voting has just wrapped up in the South Carolina primary today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steve Sebelius. Voting wrapped up at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. If people were in line, they're still allowed to vote. An Emerson College poll done by our Nexstar affiliate in South Carolina this week showed Joe Biden with a double-digit lead over Bernie Sanders. We'll have results as they come in our later newscast today and on 8newsnow.com. Meanwhile, Senator Bernie Sanders won the Nevada Democratic caucuses in a big way with nearly half the votes by the end of the day. Sanders was the winner by a wide margin. In distant second place, thanks largely to his strong showing in Clark County, was former Vice President Joe Biden. And in third, former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who is questioning the results. The I-Team's Vanessa Murphy talked with the chairman of the Nevada Democratic Party about how the caucus unfolded and the results.
The Nevada State Democratic Party had to switch plans in less than 3 weeks after the app they were going to use failed in the Iowa caucus. Fast forward to Saturday afternoon, Nevada's caucus was finished. Results were slowly released, and by Monday, the party says they were complete.
We took our time to go through them, and that's what the voters deserve, and that's what the campaigns deserve, accuracy.
The campaign for former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg is questioning the results and sent this letter to the state party asking for the release of early vote and in-person totals per precinct, to correct any alignment errors, and to explain results that may not look quite right.
Will the state party release the raw results if anyone calls for that, like Buttigieg?
If there are any questions with the numbers that we've submitted, I believe that, there is a process to have those, seen by the campaign. Yeah.
So you are prepared to show them?
If there is a request, I believe that we are ready for whatever that may be.
Meaning the Buttigieg campaign hasn't formally asked for a recount. McCurdy also says it's the only campaign to question the results. This was the first year early voting was offered in the history of a caucus. And according to the state party, about 75,000 Nevadans early voted and 30,000 showed up to caucus Saturday.
Any hiccups?
You know what? I think that with the plans that we had in place, the redundancies that we had to make sure that we execute a successful caucus, I think that things went really well.
A discussion now for Nevada Democrats. Should Nevada move to a primary instead of a caucus? Several high-profile lawmakers have expressed support for that. Former Senator Harry Reid says Nevada should move to a primary, and it should be the first state to weigh in, not just an early state. In Las Vegas, Vanessa Murphy, 8 News Now.
Well, those calls for a primary are being echoed by other high-profile Nevadans. Governor Steve Sisolak chimed in as well, saying, quote, fundamental challenges make it hard for Nevadans to participate, unquote. Sisolak says he's going to work with state party and legislative leaders to see how Nevada could make the switch. We spoke to Rob Ritchie, who has been involved in implementing ranked choice voting in more than a dozen cities. He says in addition to being the first time a caucus used early voting, Nevada's was also the first time anyone was required to rank at least 3 choices. Ritchie says Nevadans handled it well.
Going to a primary and then saying, oh, now you only get to pick one, after we've just seen how well Nevada voters can rank, would be, I think, a step backward, actually.
Ritchie favors a primary. He thinks it should be a ranked choice primary, though. About 1,700 early voting ballots were disqualified for things like not ranking at least 3 choices or not being signed. The New York Times went through data from the Nevada caucus and found errors in 9% of precincts. A spokeswoman for the Nevada Democratic Party sent a statement to 8 News Now, which reads in part, quote, "Our source of truth and accuracy on results will be the paper record of the caucus reporting sheet from each precinct because it is the best indication of what took place in the room on caucus day," end quote. That full statement is on our website at 8newsnow.com. A culinary union leader says she's still receiving threats that started after union leadership warned about Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan. The I-Team's Vanessa Murphy explains why Sanders still came out on top.
This flyer caused controversy. In the lead up to the Nevada caucus, culinary union leaders warned of Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All health care plan, informing members the Vermont senator would end their private health care plan. Still, Sanders won the Nevada caucus, and that may not have happened without union members' support.
You know, like family, we agree, disagree, but one group together is stronger, and thousands of workers, 60,000 people together is what we make for 84 years the culinary union the strong union.
Gioconda Arguello Klein is the secretary-treasurer for Local 226.
I think based on that flyer, people might think, is the union worried that Bernie Sanders could be the nominee?
What we're saying is this, we want to focus on our goals.
One of those goals was making sure union members vote. For the first time in history, the Nevada State Democratic Party offered early caucus voting, which the party says about 75,000 Nevadans participated in.
We feel good because people put their voice. Majority of the people want to have a choice.
The Sanders campaign released a statement on February 12th, which reads in part, Bernie has been clear that under Medicare for All, we will guarantee that coverage is as comprehensive or more, so then the health care benefits union workers currently receive and union health clinics, including the Culinary's Health Clinic, will remain open to serve their members. Also, after the distribution of that flyer, Arguello Klein says she and at least one other staffer have received threats.
That not scare me. It bother my family because, they continue to be worried where I am, where they never been worried before where I am.
She says police are investigating. Sanders has said publicly he does not support the behavior behind any threats. Vanessa Murphy, 8 News Now.
Well, speaking of police, Party Chairman McCurdy also ended up calling North Las Vegas police on a Sanders supporter who protested outside his home the night before the caucus. The woman, Maria Estrada, recorded the protest on Facebook Live. An article in Politico says she is a candidate for an assembly seat in California. North Las Vegas police tell us they were called to McCurdy's home, but she was not there when they arrived. Politico said McCurdy didn't tell the press because he knew how important it was that the Nevada caucuses be seen as fair. Well, the delegates chosen on Saturday will now go to the county convention, which will then pick candidates for the state convention. The end result is that 36 pledged national delegates for the state of Nevada will go on to the national convention in Milwaukee. Sanders is projected to win 24 of our state's delegates. Biden got 9, and Buttigieg will get the remaining 3. Nevada also has 12 superdelegates who would vote if nobody gets enough delegates to win. The Democratic National Committee plans to ramp up its staffing and operation here in Nevada. It announced Nevada is one of 6 battleground states it plans to invest in. That will include adding hundreds of staffers on the ground and doing data here and also opening new state offices. Well, the CBS debate in South Carolina on Tuesday night was the most no-holds-barred clash so far. Candidates tackled the frontrunner Bernie Sanders while making the case that they would be the best person to take on President Trump in November. CNN's Mary Maloney has a wrap-up from Charleston.
Bernie Sanders feeling the burn of being the frontrunner.
Bernie and I agree on a lot of things, but I think I would make a better president.
Bernie, in fact, hasn't passed much of anything.
Imagine spending the better part of 2020 with Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump.
I'm hearing my name mentioned a little bit tonight.
Democratic candidates for president taking shots at the Vermont senator for past comments.
Bernie voted 5 times against the Brady bill.
And current campaign promises.
Bernie Sanders' analysis is right. The difference is I don't like his solutions.
After a disastrous debate performance in Las Vegas, Michael Bloomberg hoping to rebound.
I have been training for this job since I stepped on the pile that was still smoldering on 9/11. I know what to do. I've shown I know how to run a country.
I'm not out of time.
Joe Biden fighting to keep his candidacy afloat.
I intend to win South Carolina, and I will win the African-American vote here in South Carolina.
Candidates attempting to appeal to African-American voters. More than 60% of the Democratic electorate in South Carolina is black, making the voting bloc crucial for any campaign.
It's not just who talks the best, who actually gets things done. And especially with the African-American community, there have been a lot of broken promises.
This is the last time the candidates will be together on stage before the South Carolina primary and delegate-rich Super Tuesday. In Charleston, South Carolina, I'm Mary Maloney.
Coming next, preparing for the coronavirus.
Our goal is to keep America safe and to slow the introduction of this new virus.
What government officials are doing to prepare in case the virus starts to spread on American soil. Plus, the U.S. Supreme Court hears a case about a law making it a crime for someone to verbally encourage a person to come to the U.S. illegally. Why challengers say the law violates the First Amendment. That's next on Politics Now.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
There are no coronavirus cases yet here in Nevada, but state and local leaders are preparing anyway. Even though people have been picking store shelves clean of face masks, officials are not recommending the general public wear them except when they're already sick to keep from infecting others. Health officials are pointing out that most of the deaths have been cases where other people had different factors, such as the flu. CDC officials in Washington, D.C. testified on Thursday that it may require tens of billions of dollars from Congress to prepare for and fight the disease. And they're not ruling out mass quarantines.
Our response involves multi-layered, aggressive containment, and potential mitigation measures as needed.
As many as 70 companies are working to develop a bedside diagnostic test for hospital use. Nevada is signing on to a multi-state investigation into the electronic cigarette maker Juul. Attorney General Aaron Ford says the company is preying on children and people looking for help to quit smoking. So far, there have been 7 reported cases of hospitalization because of vaping-related lung injuries in Nevada. In all 39 states have signed on to the investigation. Well, coming next, public assistance and immigration.
A public charge is someone who's expected to be a cost to the taxpayers.
How the new public charge rule will limit some of the green cards handed out by U.S. immigration officials. Plus, a new Nevada program to encourage innovative financial businesses to move here. How it will create what the state is calling a sandbox test lab. Next on Politics Now.
You're watching Politics Now.
The Trump administration's public charge rule took effect this week. The rule makes it harder for some migrants to get into the U.S. Washington correspondent Alexandra Limon reports on the effects the rule could have on immigration and on the U.S. economy.
The Trump administration's public charge rule could withhold green cards or visa renewals if an immigrant has received or is considered likely to receive too much public assistance.
It reinforces and effectively reinstates the American legal tradition of self-sufficiency for people coming here to live their lives with us here in America.
Ken Cuccinelli is the acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security.
The public charge rule will filter out a small portion of people who apply for green cards.
The rule also considers other factors like age, income, and dependence. The Migration Policy Institute found that over the past 5 years, 69% of green card applicants had at least one factor that will now be considered negative.
It's deeply hypocritical. Under these same rules that the Trump administration is now implementing, President Trump's own grandfather, his wife, his in-laws would not be able to become residents of this country.
Critics say the rule change will hurt immigrants who need the benefits most and could also harm the U.S. economy.
The U.S. needs legal migrants coming here in order to continue the economic growth that we've seen.
The U.S. economy certainly doesn't need more public charges. Public charge is someone who's expected to be a cost to the taxpayers.
While the rule faces legal challenges, the Supreme Court is allowing it to go into effect in the meantime. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
The U.S. Supreme Court is hearing a case that asked the justices to strike down an old immigration law that's been rarely enforced. The argument is that the law violates the First Amendment. Now, the law makes it a federal crime to verbally encourage someone to to come to or remain in the U.S. illegally. It is punishable by up to 5 years in prison. John Langler talked to Alexander Limon about that case.
The woman who was charged under this law was an immigration lawyer who faced multiple charges for fraudulently filing immigration claims. So she also had other charges, but one of the charges that she faces that the Supreme Court is now reviewing is that she encouraged migrants to remain in the country illegally, and her lawyers say that law should not be on the books because it is a violation of the First Amendment.
So this case doesn't deal necessarily with people who are in the country illegally. It's people who would encourage them to stay. But it'd be more than just legal issues. There are other reasons that people might encourage someone who's in the country illegally to not leave the U.S. How might this ruling in the long run affect that?
Yeah, it wouldn't only apply to immigration lawyers, let's say. It could, potentially apply to family members. Maybe the example that the Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts brought up was, would a grandmother who says to their grandchild or vice versa, I wish you wouldn't have to leave the U.S. Because of legal reasons or not having proper documentation, would that person be prosecuted? Also, a doctor who says to a patient, I want you to remain in the U.S. even though you're here illegally so I can treat your cancer, or a teacher who says to a student, I wish you could remain in the U.S. Because you're doing so well academically. All of those could potentially be prosecuted under the law the way it's written right now.
I guess another broader question would be, depending on what the ruling is, this law has been on the books. It's just, according to the government, I think we've talked about, hasn't really been enforced as the initial issue. But if, with the weight of a Supreme Court ruling behind it, something changes, what effect might that have down the long term?
Yeah, so this law has been on the books for 150 years, technically, and the most recent version of it has been in place for decades, but it's never really been enforced before. So this could go two ways. If the Supreme Court upholds the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision that the law is unconstitutional because it violates the First Amendment, then the law would have to be taken off the books and would no longer be enforceable. On the flip side, if the Supreme Court decides to let the law stay in place, the lawyer who took this all the way to the Supreme Court is arguing that this could have really, dangerous effects. He argues that simply having this law on the books, even if it's not utilized, could have a chilling effect on freedom of speech because people would be afraid to, speak their opinion about immigration issues because they would fear being prosecuted even if they actually aren't.
Well, oral arguments in that case are wrapped up. A decision is expected by June. Coming next, a test lab for new companies.
If you are innovating and bringing something new to a new idea to the marketplace and you fit within one of these categories of companies, then you're a potential participant in the sandbox.
The new program Nevada is trying to attract new companies in financial sectors. That's next on Politics Now.
You're watching Politics Now.
Senate Bill 161, passed by the last session of the Nevada legislature, set up what is called the Nevada Sandbox Program. Basically, it lets new or innovative financial services companies, such as escrow or mortgage lenders, apply to test their products here in Nevada. The program just started taking applications for the first 3 businesses a few weeks ago. Republican State Senator Ben Kieckhefer was a sponsor on the bill and talked to Alice Backus about how it'll work.
What prompted this legislation?
Back in the previous interim before the 2019 legislative session, we were looking for ways to sort of create statutory and regulatory frameworks to encourage economic development in this space, in financial technology. And we thought that this was a model that had worked well in other states. Arizona has a program, Wyoming has a program, I think Utah has a program as well. And it's been successful. It's attracted businesses that want to try new products. And one of the really cool things about it is that it brings regulators and businesses together from the start so that a company doesn't develop this technology and then have regulators come in and slam down on top of them. It develops a dialogue and allows the regulatory space to really understand these products as they're being developed and as they're being rolled out, so that it's not as much of an acrimonious relationship. It's more harmonious, and it allows for both sides to work together to develop these new products while still continuing to support consumer protections.
Sure. And then once you got it, it's good to go. There's not going to be any changes, so that's really nice too.
Well, yeah, it's important for these companies to have some security, and it's a limited test. So they have 2 years. They can apply for one more to test their products in Nevada with a limited number of customers and some restrictions on how much financial exposure these customers can have. But then once that test period is up, they either need to become fully licensed or convince policymakers like me that we need to change our regulations because they're no longer applicable to the marketplace as it currently exists.
Okay. Do you know how many companies are using that so far?
Well, there are limits into how many companies can participate in the sandbox. So we didn't want to just open it up and have it be a free-for-all, right? So in the first 6 months, 3 companies could be approved. In the second 6 months, 3 more could be. And then there are limits of 5 and 5 in the second year of this rollout. So it's a limit because we didn't want to overwhelm the state with these new products, right? And put a lot of additional burdens on the state as it tracks these products. But we're hopeful that it's going to attract new companies to the state who want to develop new companies here in Nevada and grow them from small to large here in our state.
Well, if you happen to be the CEO of one of those innovative financial companies, we put a link to the application process and more information about the program on our website at 8newsnow.com. Well, next week, we are keeping an eye on Super Tuesday, where 12 states vote for their presidential nominees. Super Tuesday includes California and Texas, and it has the potential to swing the race for president. Bernie Sanders has been leading in polls in the 3 western states and has more of a close fight in the 7 southern states. We'll, of course, have full coverage here on Channel 8 on Tuesday. Well, that's our show. Thanks for watching Politics Now. You can email me, Sebelius, at 8newsnow.com. Stay up to date online and watch us right here every Saturday. Right now, stay tuned for your local news with Sasha Loftus.